Oh, almost flew, almost doing things we used to do. There's a girl here and she's almost you. Almost all the things that you promised with your eyes, I see in hers too. Now your eyes are red from crying. Almost blue. Flirting with this disaster became me. It named me as a fool only to be. Almost blue. Almost touching it will almost do. There's a part of me that's always true. Always. All the things that you promised with your eyes, I see in yours too. Now your eyes are red from crying. Almost you, almost me. Almost blue.
Hi guys, welcome to the channel, welcome to the platform. It's lovely to see you all. It's been a great day. It's nice to finish it off with you. It's nice to finish the week off in your company, in your presence, and jump into the weekend. We are continuing our preview of the Phillips auction that's coming up in Geneva, in that lovely hotel that they always held their auctions in, La Réserve. And in this case, we have started to go through the catalog, but we have left out a lot of pieces. We have skipped over a lot of pieces, so we'll have a chance to go back and check out what we have missed and see what other interesting watches, what other rare and unique pieces have made it to this catalog and what we can learn from them. Now, one thing that I want to say before we begin is a way of clarifying why I usually do auction previews, even if a lot of these watches are out of the reach of most of us. Right? First and foremost, I think with the efforts of these auctioneers, with the curational work that they do, they really choose the best example that money can buy whenever we come to a particular historical reference, especially when it comes to vintage watches. But they also bring the most attractive packages together when it comes to their presentation, their auctioning of more modern pieces, even contemporary watches as well. So from a historical perspective, there's a lot to be gained. There's a lot to be learned, because you learn to recognize over time what is desirable in these watches. You learn to train your eyes. You learn to you learn what to look for. You learn, in fact, over time, when you start seeing more and more examples of these watches, what fetches more value in the eyes of the collector community, what you personally like. That's something you will figure out. And over time, of course, you will see sometimes full sets, right? You know, an entire presentation that is a time capsule, right? So you will get to learn about what you expect to find if you are in fact looking for something that almost serves as that time travel machine. Secondly, of course, Basil, yeah, I've noticed. It's an interesting development. We'll talk about it maybe a little more later. From a contemporary perspective, of course, we benefit a lot by going over catalogs, but you would benefit even more if you could actually attend some previews, which don't let anything scare you off. For the most part, auction houses, especially when it comes to watches, welcome real enthusiasts with open arms. They're always extremely helpful. They don't interrogate you. They don't question or second guess your interest in any of the pieces. And they will in fact help you and guide you and share as generously as possible, as extensively as possible, what they know about those pieces. But even by looking over a catalog, you can get a great idea about how certain up-and-coming brands are performing when they are left to the whims of some of the most passionate buyers who don't lack the resources and nor really the will to spend lavishly on what they exactly want. So it's a good way to also understand where the trends are going, right? I would never advise you to necessarily obsess over how the amount of money that a watch realizes, and accept that as if it were some sort of divine revelation as the value of that watch. But it can tell you a thing or two about if that watch is desired, how much is it desired relative to similar watches in the segment. So even if you are not in that price point, even if you are not in that segment where you are actually bidding on watches that that start at 100,000, 150,000 and more, you can still start to understand what are the trends that everyone is chasing for. What are the watches that captures people's imagination in the category of, say, a chronograph? What are the things that people are looking for in time-only watches? Do you share those interests? Do you share those aesthetic concerns? Do you have a similar investment in those horological features? Do you actually value the same things or not? Right? You know, all of this is basically an important resource for us to absorb and learn from, but also it is a platform. Auction previews are a platform for us to develop our own critical thinking about what it means to be seriously interested in wristwatches, what it means to be passionately committed to the wristwatches, to the horological world. quick bit of news. You remember about a week ago, with the help of Aussie Expat, who shared this link with us, we discovered a 99-cent Tag Heuer watch on Amazon, which I didn't waste any time to order. In fact, I ordered 3 units, 3 watches. It turns out, as we have guessed, that it is a non-existent product. I've just received an email today from Amazon who were explaining basically that it was a misquoted price and they will not honor it. And if you look at the MSRP of the same Tag Heuer watch that was listed for 99 cents plus shipping, which brings it over to about $4 per piece, it would be unreal because the MSRP is $2,000-3,000. So that's what happened. It's a bummer because I would have a couple of things to give away and generally enjoy doing that. It wouldn't be something random. It would have a story to go with it. That's what I prefer. I don't just want to involve the channel in these kinds of schemes. It has to have some meaning, some force, some powerful narrative behind it. And this was that kind of an issue. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But hey, we still gained that valuable lesson once again. And sometimes it needs to be reinforced. If a deal seems too good to be true, it's not good. So thankfully, we haven't been charged for anything. If there's a hold on your bank account or credit card, it will be lifted rather soon. That's what they explain. But anyway, that's what it is. Yes, Boo is right. Boo is right. Thomas Brookman says, provenance, the story radiating from and uniquely embedded in the hand touch sweeping through the watch. Yes, remember, by the way, when we were talking about one of the watches earlier about the Phillips auction, of all these rare and unique pieces they had curated, put together from that unique piece of Zenit 135 observatory caliber that emerged in a collaboration with Voutilainen and Phillips Auction House, and that they made in this beautiful execution of a salmon dial, which goes to the benefit of the Susan Comment Foundation, right? Very unique piece. All these pieces, what I immediately gravitated towards was that one old Rolex pre-Daytona chronograph that had once belonged to one Eric Clapton, among others. So I will bring it up again as we are going through the auction, but that's the other thing, right? You get to learn when you look at these sorts of catalogs, you get to learn about the stories that go with particular examples of watches. You get to understand also some of the historical context, right? Because at the end of the day, these watches also belong to a historical context. So sometimes you will see, oh, this was actually consigned by the family of, let's say, of an actual COMEX diver, right? Of an actual commercial diver. Or this was consigned by the family of this fighter pilot from the US Navy. So you will get to learn more about the stories and histories that infuse these little machines and that permeate these timepieces, and that is as good as any of a platform that can help you gain a better understanding of what a wristwatch means and what it really means for people. It's a one of the best ways to explore and understand your own hobby. Peeping Time says, I was going to try to get one of those Tag Heuers, but noticed it wasn't on Amazon. It almost immediately disappeared anyways. It was someone who named their account Amazon. Yeah, I don't know what was going on, honestly. It didn't. You could easily understand that it wasn't coming from Amazon because they were charging extra, even though I had Prime. But, you know, all of that doesn't matter at this point. It is what it is. I wanted to direct your attention as we start. Oh, one more thing. I'm going to do something special each night at the end of the broadcast. I'm going to share with you a very special tip. Usually a good deal I have seen somewhere on the internet. It can be one of the usual suspects. It can be something completely out there. But usually it would be a watch that would be of interest to the audience here. You know, for us who are invested in the history of these pieces, who are interested in the horology that gives them a beating heart, who are somehow intrigued by the aesthetic design elements. So at the end of each broadcast, for the last 5 minutes or so, I will share with you a tip to get a relative deal on a timepiece, or give you a particular entrance point into collecting vintage watches. So keep that in mind as you continue to listen to the broadcast. And if you are there until the very end, you'll benefit from it. Pardon me. So as you know, Alan Gonzone, the Saxonian German watchmaker, has been involved in motorsports for quite some time. They are especially invested in sponsoring these concours of elegance. They have been there with the one at Lake Como. And for some years, I think already a decade probably, they have been sponsoring the Concours of Elegance at the Hampton Court as well. And this year, apparently, they decided to create a special watch for the occasion that they would auction off for charity rather than giving it away to the best in the competition, which I think is a fantastic idea. It's something that is actually for a good cause. And the Alan Gonzone CEO, Wilhelm Schmidt, was quite specific in saying, quite explicit, I should say, in saying, hey, people who participate in these sorts of vintage car competitions, people who are car collectors, are usually very privileged people anyways. They don't really need a free watch. So ultimately, I think it was a great idea and a great practice by them that they decided to give away this 1815 chronograph Hampton Court edition to Phillips, so that it could be auctioned off to the benefit of young people and their education. And that's an opportunity that is provided by the Prince's Trust in England. Of course, that is a foundation that H.M. King Charles III established some decades back when he was still the Prince of Wales. And it is a foundation that benefits education first and foremost, and tries to provide that extra push for young people to enter the workforce in a more knowledgeable way, and what could be more noble than that. So I'm very glad that they decided to do it, and they really put together an incredible watch, if you ask me, that is almost two watches in one. Because there's an aspect to 1815 as a series, and 1815 flyback chronograph specifically, that oozes with vintage and vintage-inspired aesthetics, right? Essentially, the Alang und Söhne 1815 series looks like a pocket watch as if it were converted into a modern use, as if it were made in a way that would appeal to a modern audience, and that would actually be worn on the wrist. So this watch represents that, I think, very handily, especially when we turn to its back, to its case back. You will see that even more evocatively. But on the face of it, it also, I think, has this unique sporty feel that not many Alang und Söhne watches have, even when they are chronographs, right? Which, interestingly, are in fact, I think, still to this day, even after the release of the Odysseus, still their most sporty watches are chronographs, I would say. In this case, that dial configuration with the two eyes that we recognize as specifically as reverse panda, right? As if it were a black panda with white patches around its eyes. So you have that reverse panda configuration on the dial, on a two-register dial, which again screams vintage, sporty chronograph, maybe something from the 60s, right? The Carreras of this world. It's also, I think, beautifully enhanced by the contrast of this gilt inscriptions, and of course the tachometer in this golden script. Incredibly balanced, as Lange watches generally are. Very robust, executed in white gold, and has that great interplay of black and silver with a touch of gold. I think that really elevates the watch to another realm. And ultimately, I think it looks as sporty as any Lange watch, as sporty as a Lange und Söhne timepiece could be, and that is the case from the front. That is the face of the watch, and you can see how that gilt writing on the dial is also a very subtle tone. So in fact, also kind of looks like cream shade, right? So you know what we vintage watch enthusiasts really like is, one thing we like is this sort of feeling of patina, a feeling of a creamy patina against a black dial, and this is a watch that puts that into full display on its face. Now, when it comes to the back of the watch, you'll see that it has a hinged case back. That architecture of the modern hand-wound chronograph caliber in full display. Of course, as always, even when you don't have the 3/4 bridge plate, all the bridges of the chronograph, all the chronograph bridges are still in German silver. All the screws that you can see are heat blued. The rubies are set in gold chaton. You can see the perlage beautifully, obviously the swan neck regulator, as well as the engraved, hand engraved balance conch as well. And so you have that beautiful hinged case back that of course snaps shut when you are done with your examination. And of course the back of that case is actually inscribed in a way to commemorate the occasion, which is the Conquerors of Elegance at the Hampton Court Palace 2022. So, yes, to put it very quickly, Erlangen chronograph is a beautiful thing. In a way, it really put a serious jolt into the industry and into the high horological segment in its release through the Datograph in 1999 with the caliber 951.1. At that time, all these great houses of horology, the so-called Holy Trinity, did not make their in-house chronographs. The finishing of their movements were nowhere near this level. Ultimately, this was more than a gentle nudge to get them off their seats and put them to some serious work by Erlangen. And ultimately, I think it was for the good of everyone involved. This, of course, has the more updated caliber of L951.5, but Erlangen with its 951 hand-wound chronograph series really took the mantle from Lemonia CH27. If that was the chronograph movement that in its reliability, in its architecture, in its adaptability defined the 20th century, Erlangen-Söhne's L951.1 has really defined so far the high horological chronograph in the 21st century. And this is, of course, a unique piece, pardon me, one of one, and the estimate being 100 to 200,000 Swiss francs, you can expect it to go for even higher than that, and that's the lot 209. Yeah, I just wanted to show you again from yesterday, lot 40. This is a very handsome and charming chronograph that Rolex made before they had something that they called the Cosmograph, something that they released first as Le Mans, and then finally iconized as the Daytona. This is from 1953, and it's already a beautiful thing with those alpha hands that we have seen just now on the Erlangen-Söhne 1815 chronograph. The beautiful gilt writing that actually comes through of the black dial of this period. And in this case, it's so beautifully aged that it has developed this relatively even, but also somewhat mottled tobacco brown patina, which Phillips, in fact, did a great job of bringing out in pairing the watch with this vintage style tobacco brown strap that has these double and stitches as well. And it is a watch that was once belonged to one Eric Clapton, so it even makes it more special. I think the last time this watch was sold, it went for almost $250,000. Of course, again, the 6034 is not a very rare watch, but they are more rarely seen with the black dial. If they're seen with the black dial, not all of them will have this sort of warm and appealing patina that looks something other than humidity damage, right? And also, I don't think there's another example of this that has been once owned by Mr. Slowhand himself. And again, to just put another note there, I would prefer something like this to a dial that has been refinished and restored, and that has been cleaned in a way that makes it look like something it isn't, right? If I would rather have something that is properly patinated like this. And the estimate in this case is for lot 40, which is a Rolex pre-Daytona chronograph, reference 6034, 120,000 to 240,000 Swiss francs. Peeping Time says, I see Clapton. Cool. Mookie says, congrats on 1K subs, LHV. Well earned. Well, thank you. Thank you. I've been working quite hard. As you guys know, it doesn't automatically click in. I submitted everything. It went through. And now we're just waiting for the final confirmation. And after that, it's party time. Thomas Broadbent says, greatest Eric Clapton album, fantastic song, great musicians. Who is waiting? Behind the watch, behind the sun, she's waiting. Yeah, that watch has amazing patina. It really does rock. And yes, maybe one should sell a house and get this. Well, you know, if you're responsible for a family, it's another discussion altogether. If you're just a Rolling Stone, that is another matter. I would still not recommend it, of course. I think watches should be bought for fun, to be worn, to be enjoyed, and with disposable income. My preference is always to pay in cash, in fact. We have also looked at this Joshua Shapiro Infinity watch with his exquisite guillochage engine turning decoration on the dial. That was lot 47. Shapiro works out of Southern California, and he really distinguishes himself by making these dials himself with Rose engine machines. He even has his own design, own pattern that you can't find anywhere else, which he used in the subsidiary seconds dial. Of course, the infinity sign is the counterweight for that seconds hand. I think aesthetically the watch is really pleasing, but the dial is really what is most special about it. Otherwise, it is a UWD caliber in it, Uhrwerke Dresden. It's it's not average, but it's also not the most elevated thing. I would like to see how these watches would perform in auction, because as new, ordered directly from Shapiro, they're not cheap at all. So I would really like to see how it performs in this sort of secondary market setting, and that's a lot 47. The estimate is 15 to 30,000 Swiss francs. And feel free, by the way, I'm going to drop the link in the chat for the auction catalog. So if you want to skim through it and identify a few lots that you want me to prioritize, that you want me to look at, feel free to do that. You have an FP Jaune at lot 47 with an automatic caliber, right? Octa means precisely that. It's an annual calendar wristwatch, has a relatively unusual or irregular, uncommon design that FP Jaune in a way made into a signature. Of course, hours and minutes, the running seconds, a pointer date, and the day of the week and the month is communicated through these two openings. And the dial itself has a very pleasing shade of gold. But these watches are quite inaccessible, honestly, through retail. And the result is usually that they perform even more exorbitantly in the auction market and on the secondary market at large. So even though I have great respect for FP Jaune's horological art, designs and executions, I think there's hardly anything on the secondary market that merits the price tags that they carry. This is a 2003 model with a 38 millimeter diameter, and the estimate is 80,000 to 160,000 Swiss francs. Cheers, by the way. And that was in pink gold, and at lot 50, they actually have a platinum octa with the moon phase. And as you can see, it has just the date in this display and the power reserve and a moon phase right here under the power reserve. In platinum, I think it's a beautiful watch. The black dial is quite rare when it comes to this model. It's a 40 millimeter piece, which seems to be universally desirable, whatever the genre of the watch is, whatever its functionality, complication, or occasion is. The consensus somehow seems to have settled at 40 millimeters for an ideal case size for a watch. So this is it. The estimate is again 80,000 to 160,000 Swiss francs. Lot 50 and FP Jaune Octa Lune with the black dial. Full set, and one of the only 6 known apparently. So it's a pretty rare, exceptionally rare watch. You have a version of the Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronograph that I really cherish, the 3970. Not only do I like the contours and design of that case, I also appreciate the fact that it's a 36 millimeter in diameter. It is therefore, to me at least, more universally wearable. I like it in this white gold case with that silvered dial. I think it's very simple and elegant. And as you see, it doesn't have an exhibition case back, but they were nice enough here to pop that up and let you see that CH27 architecture. Here, of course, in the version that Patek Philippe executed as a perpetual calendar chronograph. And right next to it, again, more or less with the same estimate, right? You know, the 3970E. I'm sorry, they're both platinum. Sorry, so the watch that we were looking at was actually in platinum, 3970E, and they also have the 3970EP, which is also in platinum, but this time with the black dial. And that has an estimate of 100,000 to 150,000. And that actually has an exhibition case back, but also in the tradition of that particular period of time comes with an additional platinum case back, so as to not rob the customer of that additional precious metal material. The good old days. It's 100 to 150,000 from 2002. And again, I find these to be just the perfect generation of perpetual calendar chronographs. They suddenly grew into 39 millimeter beasts in 5970, which was the very last generation of Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronographs that were still powered by Lemania CH27, or rather Lemania 2320 based calibers. But I do really like the 3970 because of their proportions. And for that reason, by the way, they're not preferred to 5970. Everyone goes crazy about 5970 because they're moderately rare, so both exclusive and accessible at the same time. They're also quite modern in their proportions, so that is what most collectors prefer. You have a 3940, which is a perpetual calendar without the chronograph function, also in platinum. I think the Roman numerals and the alpha hands distinguish the watch quite nicely. That's also, if I'm not mistaken, a 36 millimeter watch. Yes, it is 36 millimeter in diameter. Again, quite a beautiful piece, and I think it looks in that contrast of the platinum case and the black and white dial quite somber and dressy in a way that would befit a dress watch of that caliber that would perhaps be worn for a formal occasion. Of course, they toned, the presentation tones it down a little bit with that Air Force Blue strap, which makes it seem a little sportier. But in either case, its platinum Patek Philippe watch is really at the highest level of this particular dress genre. And in this case, you're getting pieces that still carry the hallmark of Geneva, belong to that period in Patek that's never going to come back for better or worse. Because as you know, these days they're much more obsessed with making their in-house calibers and sealing them with, or rather marking them with their own logo rather than entrusting that to a third party. We have looked at the various Nautiluses here, a couple of which were actually distinguished by the Tiffany writing. In fact, all three of them, I think, yes. The 5711 in steel has been retailed by Tiffany, and you can see that at 6 o'clock. The estimate is 80 to 160,000. 5712, 80 to 160,000. Again, that is the version of the steel Patek Philippe Nautilus with the power reserve indicator and the moon phase on the dial, as well as the pointer date. And then you have the annual calendar version of it, again with the moon phase, with a white dial. That's also signed by Tiffany and Co. at 6 o'clock. And that is 5726 with an estimated value of $70,000 to $140,000. Mookie says, I would wear lot 50. Sorry for missing out on some of the conversation there. Yeah, 50, I think F. Pigeons with the black dial are relatively rare, and I think they look very august to me, very wearable. Again, I don't have, don't take me wrong, I don't have anything against the brand. In fact, I adore a lot of their designs, even if they're not necessarily for me. But on the secondary market, I just find them to be very disproportionately priced. Lot 21, who was it that drew my attention to it? That's Mookie. He wants me to discuss lot 21. Yes, I went through this one very extensively, Mookie, in last night's broadcast, so I will direct you there. But that's probably my second favorite piece out of it all. I love all the Voutilainen pieces that are sold on this auction. This one is, of course, much more special. You know my passion for the salmon dial, really a lot of different shades of pink, orange, or copper. I adore it. But I guess after the Clapton piece at lot 40, along with the 1815 Chronograph limited edition, probably that Zenit, Voutilainen, and Phillips collaboration with the 135 observatory movement is my favorite of this particular catalog, of this particular curation. What else do we have? Lot 125 for peeping time. Let's see. Full on John says, congrats on 1K. When will we be able to become members and super chat? I submitted everything. Full on John, thank you for asking. Thank you for being even interested in something like this. As soon as possible. I put everything through. I submitted my application. It is under review. It should come through quite soon. But the guess is from 1 week to 1 month, so we can never know. Lot number 50, we said FP Jean Auto, but this is lot 125 for peeping time. Let's do it. Oh, I love it. I love it. Tornek Rayville, as you know, was in a way the US branding of some Blancpain 50 Fathoms watches. Tornek was the US distributor of the brand. So this is an extremely beautiful, pardon me, and a historically important watch. Even the case back, the engraving on the case back is very appealing, is very exciting. If found, return to the nearest military facility. Amazing. You know, it's a piece of history that you're holding in your hand, and it is a dangerous piece of history indeed, because it's oozing with radioactive material, but everything is properly marked. It's really, there's really something very authentic and very appealing about mil-spec watches to begin with, right? Watches made to military specifications, if they are properly issued actually and used for that purpose. Of course, that increases both the historical value and, depending on the buyer, also the romance of the watch as well. And I like their presentation, which is very simplistic, very threadbare, very serious in a way, with a sand-colored NATO strap. Fits the watch beautifully, both in terms of its purpose and the color of the patina on the dial, the way that the luminous material has aged. As you guys know, this circle, this globe at 6 o'clock was actually a moisture indicator. These watches were military issued, and the quartermaster would actually recollect them, retrieve them from the divers at the end of the missions. And that moisture indicator served as a quick way, as an easy way to make sure that the watches were not compromised, so they could be used in further missions, or alternatively would have to go to service. This is from roughly 1965. It's a serious mil-spec, military issued diver in the genre of Blancpain 50 fathoms in 41 millimeter of case diameter, made for the US Navy, for an estimated value of $60,000 to $120,000. Lot 125 is a Tornek Rayville reference TR 900. Hey Dirk, how are you doing, man? Jake Brooks says upvoted, and Dirk says well earned. Hey, thank you, man. Thank you. Thomas Broadband says, I tried FP Jaune, even invited to order at retail in the metal, didn't move. I just could not buy to flip. At that time, they weren't really flippable. They were going right under retail, but right under retail, the Chronomètre Bleu in 2016, 2017 even. I was offered one. I just had to wait for 2 or 3 months, but I just wasn't interested, honestly. A three-hander at that price point didn't really intrigue me, still doesn't intrigue me. I love blue as a color, but I'm not obsessed with having blue on a watch dial. So it is what it is. But I do love FP Jaune for what it represents, even if it's not for me. Jake Brooks reminds everyone to upvote. Thank you so much. Yes, we are just nearing that 1 hour mark. So if you have learned something from this show, if you have been enjoying it, if you have been benefiting from it, please hit the like button. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps me so much. So I would really appreciate it if you could help me with that, if you could help me gain a little more exposure. Hey, if you are just stumbling upon this broadcast, please subscribe. I'm here for Watch Talk every day, pure Watch Talk, nothing but knowledge of wristwatches and the passion for them. So hopefully we will continue expanding this community well beyond 1,000 subscribers. That was just a drop in the ocean. That was just the first goal. We have such a long way to go. And again, if you want me to succeed in that path, if you want me to continue on that path. And if you want to push me over until that monetization actually comes through, you have a number of ways you can do that. You can contribute via PayPal. That's Lord Hellespont V@gmail.com, Lord Hellespont V@gmail.com. I also have a Cash App, $LHVVV, $LHVVV. And if you click and become a consistent contributor on Patreon, you will be committed to increasing the quality and quantity of content on this channel. It helps me free up more time. It helps me give, therefore, more attention and care to this channel. That will be much appreciated. So I posted the links there, but they're already there. The information is already there in the crawling ticker, included in the video description. So feel free to contribute. Anything and everything is welcome. And so is hitting the like button. So thank you so much. Mookie, I hope you caught up with the time. Dirk says, I heard Coach was shut down. So it seems, but I think he's already back. And Jake Brooks says, I could have helped. Okay, JB, good to know that you should have let me know that you want an FP Jaune. Maybe we could work something out, because they do have a boutique here, and I'm sure they're always open to people who are actually interested in the watches and not really are taking part in the schemes where they would flip the watches to someone else. Mookie says it was just a typical Coach blackout. He's back. Peeping Time says, enjoying the show. Thank you for the thumbs up. Let me pull up the next watch. This is a beautiful example of the so-called Patrizi dial. It's, in fact, so well patinated that it looks like a limited edition of some sort, or like a custom dial, but it really isn't, guys. Osvaldo Patrizi, by way of a quick history, is a very important Italian collector and dealer. He is the person who put auctioning contemporary wristwatches and vintage wristwatches on the map by establishing Antiquorum in 1974. These particular versions of the 5-digit Rolex Daytonas are called Patrizi because early iterations of the black dial, which came with this off-white outer rings for the subdial, were quote-unquote faulty and have therefore aged in this particular way where they brown out. And in this case, it is such a wonderful shade of brown that looks like copper in a way, that has a little bit of a shimmer in it, that introduces a fourth color basically on the dial, but not a color that falls out of that scheme, out of that frame. It plays beautifully with all the other colors present, namely the black, the off-white, and the red as well. It's really a beautiful watch. This is a Rolex Daytona Patrizi 16520. This belongs to a generation where Rolex chronographs were still built upon the base, the eboche of the Zenith El Primero automatic integrated chronograph movement with a column wheel, of course. They are no longer here. Rolex is not going to go back to using externally sourced chronograph movements anytime soon. That 5-digit Rolex Daytona is the sweet spot that I'm recommending to people. Precious metal Daytonas on leather straps also present a certain value proposition, especially from earlier generations. As you know, at any rate, the contemporary Daytonas that don't come on full bracelets and that are executed in precious metal are mounted on Oyster Flex by Rolex. So on the secondary markets, there's so many options out there, but my money is on the 5-digit 16520. There's some beautiful examples there, unique examples there, and the Patrizi, of course, represent really some of the more unique, and this is beautiful condition, a very unique patina on everything really, but especially on those outer rings of the subdials. And this is number 128. I will just leave you for a second with the image of this special Daytona, lot 128, the Daytona Patrizi, and I'll be right back. I'm back. Hey, I would have, but I would have caught up on, I would have been caught up in it myself and probably would have stopped the song. It would make me lose time. It would have been too long of a break. I just needed a short one. Either way, I'm back. I promise keeping time. Tomorrow's show, I will open with some Clapton. Morning to you, my friend Fries. Today, I hope you don't have to go to work. It is a Saturday morning for you. OG Hash Hockey says Darth Vader Daytona. Yes, from 2 generations ago, in fact. And it looks even more like Darth Vader than the 116500LN with the black dial. I love it, really. Yes, this one still has the sticker on the back. It's, for all intents and purposes, it really does look unpolished. But what is really most appealing about it is, of course, the unique patina that developed on the dial, especially on the outer rings of those chronograph subdials. And comes with its proper period correct bracelet as well, for an estimated value of 35,000 to 70,000 Swiss francs. There's a very rare and collectible sea dweller that comes with an entire panoply of badges and memorabilia. This is apparently a watch that was made for the chief of the Italian police, Giovanni De Gennaro, and basically unworn, 16600. It's a sea dweller from the first decade of the 21st century, 2008 specifically. It has a dial with a special logo, right, with that octopus that symbolizes the divers that operate under the Italian police. It's a full set, untouched, tags, the anchor and everything. And on the back, it's also engraved properly. It's a very collectible piece. I don't know how far it will go, but the estimate is 150,000 to 300,000 Swiss francs. And this is a very special, possibly unique Rolex Sea Dweller, reference 16600, number 130. And as we said, again, you know, you learn quickly about the history of these watches, right? How these sea dwellers at that time were actually supplied for these forces, right? The Rolex Sea Dweller reference 16600 or 16600, made for scuba diving corps of the Italian State Police, aka the Polipetto, was realized in 78 examples in 2008 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the division. None of these watches were available ever to the general public. Rather, they were assigned to internal police personnel, and all of them were sold by La Spezia, an Italian coastal town Rolex retailer. And this basically comes with a lot of memorabilia from specifically Giovanni De Gennaro, to whom the watch was assigned, and he ended up selling it on, and now it's basically coming up for sale again. And you know, you see what these watches meant at a particular point in time, to whom they were awarded or given, how they were preserved, and what kinds of lives they lived. In this case, the watch itself lived a pretty cushy life. It was more of an award in recognition for services than a watch that was put into use, a watch that lived up to the tool watch aspect. It was more of a trophy, but what a beautiful trophy it is, and how well preserved it is. And it's only one of 78 pieces, so the lucky buyer would have something very special to keep or even to wear. And Dirk, thank you so much for for your PayPal contribution. I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's 612 in Geneva. That's right. 14 years old and never worn. That was for lot 130, the Sea Dweller. The chief was like, the police chief was like, thanks, and threw it in the back of a drawer. Hey, but it was preserved so beautifully. There are two on Chrono 24 now. Yeah, what are they priced as? What's the price point for the Polipetto on Chrono 24? Yeah, they're the Squale versions of it. Okay, yeah. I can see the two Sea Dweller 4000s with the octopus on the dial with the Polipetto. Both are selling out of Italy. One is priced around 170,000 fixed price, and then the other is priced around 230,000, and that's also fixed price. So quite rare, even when they're available for sale. And this is one that actually belonged to the chief, if that matters at all. But more than that, it comes with all that memorabilia. So if this one is great for a collector who will just display it, not stash it away, not safe queen it, but perhaps prepare a very special case so that it can be exhibited in some way or fashion. These are pretty unique FPGAs. Number 133. This is a Chronograph Souverain. To me, these pieces look more like scientific instruments than the usual sporty associations of a chronograph to me. But that's not a bad thing at all. I think this particular execution of hand-wound chronograph for FPGA is very unique and quite beautiful in its own way. 2011, 40 millimeter case diameter in full platinum, lot 133, and the estimated value is 80 to 160,000 Swiss francs. That seems to be the order of the day for anything and everything they have by FPGA. Pardon me, you have 135. That is another automatic FPGA from 2015, a smaller case, so 38 millimeter in pink gold with the moon phase and power reserve. Of course, the 2-digit date at 11.5 o'clock and the off-center seconds dial at 5 o'clock. Well, roughly at 5 o'clock. There's at 138, the independent Sartori Billard. These watches have an inkling towards the independent, quote-unquote independent high horology. They have la joue Perret movements, so relatively generic movements, but great pieces of design and have that feel of an independent watchmaker, somewhere between a modern dress watch and the field watches of a bygone time. Of course, the dimensions of the case are closer to a contemporary feel than a vintage feel. But then again, at 38.5, it's an extremely wearable watch, and it's a titanium watch, so could be very interesting for daily wear. This is a Sartori Biard, reference SP05. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a stainless steel watch with a titanium dial. My apologies. So the watch itself is a stainless steel watch, but has this polished titanium dial, which is quite unique. The estimate is 3,000 to 6,000 Swiss francs. It's an interesting piece. It's a brand that I would like to explore at some point, not necessarily own, not that I know much about it, but I would love to learn more about it soon enough. But I keep hearing more and more about them. This is an Aubin Jürgensen watch from the turn of the century, roughly 1999, at a conservative size of 37 millimeters. These are very beautiful watches, great time only or time and date pieces with that unique observatory hand for the hour hand, some wonderful classical design elements and decorations that are engine turns on the dial, great balance of blue and gold overall. I think they're very elegant watches. This is watch from 1997, 37 millimeters in diameter, and comes with the original certificate and presentation box. Apparently, the estimate is 10 to 20,000 Swiss francs, depending on the level of interest. It could be quite an interesting deal. As you know, this will be an important piece, an older Aubin Jürgensen, because the brand is in the process of being revived by one of the people who has put it on the map in the first place as a modern watchmaker, and that's Kari Voutilainen. And Kari Voutilainen has acquired the brand recently, and they will be up and running again quite soon. And I'm sure that will attract more attention to vintage pieces and neo-vintage pieces by Aubin Jürgensen, especially from the 90s. So this could be an interesting piece to follow with its classic elements of design, teardrop lugs, double-stepped case, Roman numerals on the dial, the beautiful guillochage, the engine turn decoration, and the observatory hands. Very classic dress watch by one of the forerunners of independent high horology in the 90s, Aubin Jürgensen. They're staging a comeback, so what better time than now? Lot 139, 10 to 20,000 estimated value in Swiss francs. Again, everyone, I'm sending the link there in the chat. Feel free to skim through the selections and direct my attention to any of the lots that you want me to take a closer look at, that you want me to discuss. The obligatory, of course, Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar with the 25-820 SP. This is a stainless steel and platinum watch. Beautiful blackened rotor there with the 21 carat weight. It's, of course, the proportions. The reason that Royal Oak perpetual calendars are so desired is because they represent that unique combination of veritable sports watch design of the contemporary with one of the prestige calibers and complications in the world of watches, which is a perpetual calendar. And it does all of that in a very neat and relatively small package, right? And 39 millimeters, usually in terms of the case diameter, and ultimately in a very thin case as well, usually less than 10 millimeters in thickness. And this is a relatively rare watch from 2005. Reference 25820 was made in a total of 1,235 pieces, including also 378 pieces in stainless steel and platinum, like the present example. It has uniquely the leap year indication, which was new at the time for Royal Oak perpetual calendar models. And basically, it's a largely stainless steel watch, but the bezel, which has mirror polish on the flanks, as well as the interlinks on the bracelet, are actually made out of platinum, and the black Grand Tapisserie dial provides an interesting contrast. I think this is a very handsome looking Royal Oak watch. It's a great piece, 147, with an estimated value of 80 to 160,000 Swiss francs. We have the original reference of the Patek Philippe Nautilus from 1979, 3700 in reference number. The DNA is already there. Again, much like the Royal Oak, the Nautilus is a design perhaps that has smoother lines, but that similarly blends the dynamic aesthetic of a sports watch with the discreet elegance of a dress watch. That's why both of these watches are very widely desired in the horological world. This is the original reference number, 3700, the so-called jumbo case. And the estimate is 70,000 to 140,000 Swiss francs. 149 is that famous advanced research piece from 2014. This is a 2017 production, service sealed. Blue dial, white gold. The model number is 5650G. This was the model that executed the travel time for this particular case, for this particular product. And it has this cutout to display what is specifically advanced research for this particular model. 40.8 millimeter in diameter. And it is a pretty rare watch, limited to 500 pieces. And the estimate is actually 300 to 600,000 US dollars / Swiss francs. We have at lot number 151, stainless steel Calatrava with a matching stainless steel bracelet. I think that's a beautiful aesthetic. It also happens to be co-signed by the Italian retailer Frecciero from 1939. It's for that time period. This is a Grand Calatrava. It is a big case, 35 millimeters. Very interesting watch, very desirable, of course, being a stainless steel Calatrava from the time period. They are incredibly rare. This is a relatively wearable version of it, and it's also very attractive with that big crown that's still relatively flat, that still sits relatively flat to the case. Estimated value of it is 100 to 200,000 Swiss francs. Reference 565, Patek Philippe Calatrava, lot 151, with an estimated value of 100,000 to 200,000 Swiss francs. We have at number 155, let's see. Yeah, Phillips has decent photographers for the pieces. The Paul Newman, yeah, we have discussed that in the last session. Jake Brooks, I will go back to it, but yes, I don't know about what it will crack, but that's a very unique piece. It's an exotic dial Paul Newman to begin with. It also has the Tiffany signature, so it will be. Is my glass crystal or glass? What do you mean? The watch that I'm wearing right now is a 5-digit Rolex from 1997, so that's a sapphire crystal. Depends on which watch you're asking, but let me know. They're basically all period correct, except my Datejust, which actually should have a plastic crystal, but is somehow replaced with a sapphire before I acquired it. I'm drinking Japanese whiskey, actually, Nobushi, that I'm trying to finish, that I've been trying to finish for the last week or so. Still going. Right, Full On John, I call it the Terminator as well. I like that nickname for that advanced research Aquanaut travel time. Peeping Time is drinking whiskey as well, Redwood Empire. Van Lux is drinking Oban 14. It's amazing. This is the Glencairn. It's glass. It's not, I don't think it's crystal. Van Lux, well, I mean, like, I might be drinking, but we're still on a watch channel, so I didn't think of the drinking glass in the first instance, but thank you for reminding me that I'm actually imbibing alcohol. This is a 1463. It's a very, very beautiful watch, very unique. Not only because it is a hand-wound Patek Philippe chronograph, but also because it's a split-second chronograph, because as you know, of course, Patek had in 1463, it had hand-wound chronographs from that period of time that were built on the CH-27 caliber. This piece is much more unique. You see a glimpse here of that movement. It's a different caliber in this case, from 1940. And it's actually a rattrapante, so it's a split-second chronograph, as you can see. I love those olive-shaped pushers. Very handsome watch, very well preserved. Great lemon, kind of matte yellow, lemon colored dial, classic case in pink gold. Very beautiful watch, possibly unique. They say so far unique, early, and extremely collectible chronograph. It's still built on a Valjoux base, but actually made into a split-second chronograph functionality, which is quite unique in this case. Reference 1436, with an estimated value of 200 to 400,000 Swiss francs, lot 155. To quickly return to lot 42 that JB was highlighting earlier. This is something we looked at yesterday. The Tiffany signature, of course, makes it even more desirable. You all know that the Paul Newman Daytona is a market, is a segment unto itself, in various kinds of metals, in a variety of dial iterations. And so is the double-signed luxury watch. Of course, the Tiffany signature is even more desirable when you see it on the dial of a Patek or Rolex, for that matter. The exotic dial Daytonas are also extremely desirable in and of themselves. So you have basically the trifecta here in lot 42. It's a reference number 6339. That Rolex Daytona Paul Newman with the exotic dial, retailed by Tiffany and Company from roughly year 1968, which is Rolex's Annus Mirabilis, it seems. This is lot 42, estimated value of 300 to 600,000 Swiss francs. Ooh, those are fighting words, peeping time. Are we talking about the one with salmon dial? It can be an acquired taste. Maybe you can convince her by saying it's actually auctioned off to benefit the Susan B. Komen Foundation. Maybe. Ben Lux asks, when did Rolex stop making Tiffany dials? I think Rolex just stopped offering that sort of configuration sometime in the 90s. I want to say mid to late 90s. I don't know when the exact cutoff is. I have to probably research into this, and it's not something that I want to do just by Googling. But my guess is it's like roughly mid 90s to late 90s that Rolex stops offering these sorts of customization options to retailers. And it's usually the case that other sort of more outre, more rare and different customizations are usually also requested through dealers like Asprey's of London, for example. That also stops in that time period. So my guess is mid 90s. Yes, the coronet at 12 o'clock. I think it's It's a great Rolex touch. It doesn't necessarily appear in every single watch, but when it does, I think it's really a beautiful detail. But yeah, this is such an icon. You know, again, Daytona is by no means my favorite watch. As much as I have grown over the last few years to like chronographs and even love some of them, it's still not the case that I have them as my favorite category ever. But when it comes to this particular exotic dial configuration of the Daytona, it's truly a very beautiful, balanced, and well-designed aesthetic object. And you know, I'm probably full of shit because, hey, when these were first released, they couldn't give them away, right? Apparently, those people who were around this period of time still going for hand-wound chronographs, remember 60, 68, 69, 70. This is the time where integrated automatic chronograph movements were first introduced. This is the time where where Heuer came out with their automatic chronographs. This is the time where Zenit had that claim to having produced the first automatic chronograph movement with the El Primero. So hand-wound chronographs were already less desirable, and I think those people who still went for them looked for something that was more sober, that was more plain, that was more simplistic, rather than this relatively colorful and active and somewhat messy so-called exotic dial. So I'm, you know, at this point in time, I think it's beautiful, but in the late 60s, people didn't appreciate them at all. And it took decades for them to come back, and they had to come back from abroad, so to speak, from out of Italy, where collectors obsessed about it because of a particular photograph that captured it on the wrist of one Paul Newman. Lot 64, a Patek Philippe pocket watch, world time pocket watch, reference 605, really a beautiful piece. The visuals are very familiar, of course. So is the bezel with that coin edge grip around it. It's one that was retailed by the, I think, Lausanne-based retailer, Gubelin. Gubelin is of course, a Swiss watch shop that is one of those firms that had the co-signature with Patek Philippe, and this is a beautiful world time pocket watch, almost 45 millimeters in diameter. I think it looks beautiful, and the estimate is 40 to 80,000 in yellow gold. Aesthetically, it looks every bit of a Louis Cotier world time watch, as they are executed by Patek Philippe. It's really a wonderful piece. Again, a Vacheron Constantin at lot 66, 43050/1. It's one of those that are called the Mercator, has this unique way of displaying hours and minutes with these hands that splay out and come together. Ultimately, the centerpiece is, of course, the map of Germany that is depicted on the dial, part of a 20-piece limited edition, Clausonet enamel painting on the dial of that German map, a nicely decorated Geneva seal movement in it. A beautiful Vacheron Constantin, quite limited in nature. and it is estimated to go for 25,000 to 50,000 Swiss francs. You have in 67 cushion-shaped case, Vacheron Constantin chronograph, hand-wound chronograph, of course, with a pulsometer on the chapter ring, classical piece of design, estimated to go for 30 to 60,000 Swiss francs. And 68, you have a 222 in the two-tone configuration. As you know, it's 37 millimeters, so it's almost universally wearable. A very interesting watch that hadn't really gotten the mainstream attention for so long until the new genre and newest generation of Vacheron Constantin sports chic watches overseas achieved its own success, which brought some attention to 222, and they are this year brought back into the historique collection of Vacheron Constantin and are garnering a lot of attention these days. They have a gem set, smaller version of it at lot 69, still operating on an automatic caliber, 34 millimeters. It's if a gold 222 is not loud enough for you, you might as well go for something like this. It's the ultimate gem set watch where you even have the center links set with diamonds, in addition to, of course, the chapter ring, and as well as the bezel, 20 to 40,000 Swiss francs of an estimated value. A possibly unique Speedmaster Professional with an additional 24-hour hand, the orange accents that remind you of the Ultraman, so to speak. I kind of like the aesthetic of this watch. Of course, those chronograph lovers might miss the tachometer on the bezel. Instead, of course, to get maximum utility out of that extra 24-hour hand, the bezel itself is marked with the hours. It's a great watch. It's a very unique execution. I like it, actually, and a little bit of an orange accent, of course, on a Speedmaster dial never hurts. There is a sketch of this watch in the Omega Museum, apparently, but it is possibly a prototype, possibly a unique piece from 1968, 42 millimeter in case size, and it's estimated to go for 60 to 120,000 Swiss francs. The Pre-Explorer is there, lot 75. It's a watch worn on Mount Everest by Norman Günther Durenfurt. As you see, it's one of those Oyster Perpetuals that went on the expedition to Mount Everest, has a very unique exploding patina that seems to have followed the hands. This is a collectible more than anything else. It is a watch of historical importance. It has the appropriate markings on the case back, reference 6098, lot 75, from 1952 for an estimate of 20 to 40,000 Swiss francs. The present reference 6098 in stainless steel is no ordinary watch. It was part of the second Swiss expedition to Mount Everest in autumn 1952, strapped on the wrist of the Swiss-American mountaineer and filmmaker Norman Günther Dürrenfeld, alongside Raymond Lambert, 76. Wow, they have both of these watches. It's really amazing. Both of the watches that went to Everest on the Swiss expedition. And both are Rolex Oyster Perpetuals. This is really, really fantastic. I love those white dials. It also gives further meaning, of course, to the so-called Rolex Explorer 2 with the polar dial. There we go, Raymond Lambert, Expedition Suisse à l'Everest, 1952. They have an Alaska project at lot 74. It is reference 145.22, 100 to 200,000 Swiss francs in estimated value. You have in lot 78 a Rolex Explorer, reference Explorer 2, reference 1655, a model that has been gaining some sort of traction, again, attracting attention from collectors, perhaps in reverse, right? Since we have the so-called Black Bay Pro from Tudor, that is an homage, that is a tip of the hat to this model. People are coming back to 1655 and appreciating it in a different way. The Italians have called this freccione because the 24-hour hand looks like a little arrow on the tip. It is, I think, a very unique and beautiful watch, one of the grails of Rolex vintage collecting. This particular example is from 1972, and it is estimated between 12,000 to 18,000 US dollars. Hey, Ozzy, it's lovely to see you, man. Ozzy says, yes, I just noticed. I blinked and it's happened. Yes, man. I've been putting in the work. I know you're busy, but I was here, Ozzy. I have been back. Normalize the socials. What does it mean? Oh, yeah. I will do that, JB. I'll do that. It's gonna, but I'm still waiting for the monetization to actually go through. So since we are in the last few minutes, again, I'm gonna send in the link, and you guys tell me if there are any lots that you want me to look into before I close the show. No, this is not the expedition, Ozzy. This is not the two Oyster Perpetuals that I just showed is from 1952, which was the second Swiss expedition to the Everest. So it's not the Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay expedition, which actually made it to the summit, but a previous attempt that was orchestrated by the Swiss. So still of historical importance, but perhaps not in the same way, but still more like a museum piece than something to be worn as JB says. Yeah, I think, a lot of times these estimates are conservative, but you never know. You just keep your eyes peeled. If you're genuinely interested, register and look for an opportunity to actually bid, and maybe you'll get lucky. Stranger things have happened. And Ozzy says, in the best possible way, as I mentioned, current releases always bring relevance to the vintage references. The easiest and very recent example of this is, of course, the so-called root beer, right? When Rolex reintroduced two-tone GMT Master 2, that somehow resonated with the vintage root beer reference, 1675/3 or 1675/3. Suddenly, people have started paying more attention to those vintage root beer GMT Masters, and when they were the less desired ones before in the past, now they are trending up and up, and they go for relatively more than the two-tone GMT Masters from the same period that have the usual black and gold configuration. So Peeping Time recommended that I go to the Omega Speedmaster reference 2998. These are pre-moon references, of course. These are from a time where Speedmaster wasn't even called Speedmaster Professional, of course. And there we go. This is the 2998 with a dial that has very evenly aged to a dark shade of brown that is particularly noticeable on the outer rings of the chronograph subdials. Those alpha hands, of course, both for hours and minutes and for the chronograph hands, are very characteristic of this reference. Beautiful case, as you can see from the profile. Very well preserved beyond that romantic shade, beyond the tropical shade of the dial. This is lot 202 from 1960. Of course, these are smaller than, two things to note. One, these cases are not like the twisted lug or lyre lug cases that were produced later after the moon landing for the Speedmaster and that have become iconic. They were made by this famous case maker called Huguenin Frère. Also made cases for Universal Genève, for the pole routers. Also made cases for the Certina DS. Also made cases for the 60s version of the Universal Genève tri-compacts as well, the so-called Eric Clapton reference. So these are earlier cases, 39 millimeter. So in a way, more conservative, more compact. And I think 2998-1 is one of my favorite references of the Omega Speedmaster. I really love the alpha hands. I think these are beautiful watches, but of course, as time goes, they are becoming harder and harder to find in this sort of well-preserved condition. And obviously, therefore, are commanding more and more value. So the estimate here is 30 to 60,000 Swiss francs for lot 202. Hey, you know what? Actually, I want to finish this presentation, and I see, my friends JB, my friend Aussie Expat, and Desordis in the chat. So I'm just going to finish this presentation and just to show you how much I appreciate you all, just to tell you again that if I reached today the first goal that I had on YouTube, which was to get to 1,000 subscribers, it's all thanks to you. It's all thanks to people here who are in the audience, to my friends who supported me, to everyone who advanced the conversation here, day in, day out, night in, night out. You know, I really appreciate you. I couldn't have done it without you. I didn't have any corporate support. I didn't have any push or sponsorship from any gray market dealers. I didn't have any meaningful plug from any of these bigger guys. Everything that has happened on this channel happened thanks to your support, thanks to your presence, and thanks to the collaborations that I sought on my own, and the time that was devoted by people like the professor, like Eric Wendt, like Bill Sanders, and like so many others who have joined my panel over these last few months. So I appreciate you all. So let's continue pushing through. That was a beautiful example of an Omega Speedmaster long before the moon landing, a different, smaller case, a different sort of dial fixtures, dial furnitures, including the hands, and of course, no crown guards. It is a very beautiful piece, if you ask me. You have a very elegant Patek Philippe 2551 in reference to 03, a black lacquered dial, a diamond set dial, diamonds for the markers. Nerdy Birdie, thank you for the encouragement. Aussie Expat, thank you for the congratulations. Thank you so much. And this, Thomas, I love you guys. Fries, amazing. And Mookie says, next stop 5K. Hey, we're going there. We're going there and beyond, Mookie. I promise you. We're just starting out. So just give me 1 second. I want to take the shortest, just a very short break. All right, we are back, immediately back. I Heart Maldives. Yes, thank you guys. Thank you. Please hit the like button. It helps. It's really the exposure, really your word of mouth that brought me here. In addition to, of course, the pushes I made in real life as well, reaching out to people, eating their ears off about watches, and imposing myself on them so they would actually subscribe to my channel. So thank you so much. I Heart Maldives, thank you for your support. It's been really meaningful. It's been really great. Thank you for sharing with me all your contributions. I really appreciate you. Peeping Time says 100,000 is the target. Why not? And yes, I reached yesterday night. I submitted all my documents. I applied. Hopefully, once the monetization comes through, we will have a celebration. Until then, you have a number of ways to support me, and I've already dropped the links there. I'm not going to belabor the point. Those of you who want to contribute, you can just click the link. Here we have Patek Philippe reference 2551, a beautiful Calatrava with a black lacquered dial, seconds on the sub-dial at 6 o'clock, Dauphine hands, beautiful diamond marks for the indices, the 3 baguettes at 12, 3, and 9 o'clock are particularly distinctive and beautiful. I really love this case shape, by the way. The stepped lugs are one of my favorite elements of some iterations of the classical Calatrava case. This is in white gold, of course. It is automatic. The case is so crisp that you can almost touch the hallmarks from the photograph. I actually love all these hairline scratches. It simply tells me, along with this crisp and clear hallmark, it simply tells me that, hey, this watch has not been polished. It has actually been worn, enjoyed, and it is now being entrusted upon a new owner, a new generation altogether, possibly, to enjoy it even more. And it is really that kind of watch. But of course, being Patek Philippe and being very unique, at 36 millimeters from year 1957, it is 150 to 300,000 Swiss francs. Unique, but of course very expensive. I would say from this time period, there are incredible deals to be found among Audemars Piguet and Vacheron Constantin dress watches that work with the Jaeger LeCoultre ultra-thin automatic calibers, K1071 and K1072. I promised at the beginning, for those of you who remain patient and who will stay with me, I will give you some tips. And there we are. The time has come, and I will share now. There were a few things that were still available a few days ago, but they are being sold very quickly. But there we have, for example, on Chrono 24, Vacheron Constantin automatic Calatrava style watch. I really love these cases as well. That decoration on the outer bezel, I think, is really charming. You see the same style of stepped lugs here, silvered white dial, very simple, elegant, vintage style, Calatrava style dress watch from Vacheron Constantin. It lists for about $10,000. I've seen them even slightly cheaper, around 8,000 and even less. This is a reference number 6394 from year 1960. If you ask me, it's every bit as elegant as a Patek from the period, Of course, not as unique as that black lacquered dial diamond set piece, but just as useful and just as elegant, just as appropriate for a formal occasion, which is not to say that you can't wear it elsewhere. Beautiful, beautiful white gold dress watch with exquisite attention to detail, and a beautiful JLC 1071 caliber, K1071 JLC based caliber in it. I love these watches. Don't miss them. I'm sure at some point they will take off finally. And this was my alternative to what is probably a $250,000 watch. At 10,000, you can get a Vacheron Constantin, which is extremely undervalued in this vintage dress watch territory. Great weekend, Fries. It's lovely to see you here. And Peeping Time says, I love a worn watch. Same. That's why I love this 203. You see, in 204, you have again, you have a very unique Vacheron Constantin. It's not just a dress watch. It's not just a diamond set dial. It's a beautiful caliber, as you can see here. But the actual charm is, of course, as you can see, the gong and the hammers. This is a minute repeater. And that kind of goes to show you, again, how these two brands are valued on the market, right? Both watches are from the 60s. Both watches have very elegant dress watch aesthetics. Pardon me. Around the same size, 36 millimeter in diameter. Patek is a simple two-hand time-only watch with seconds on the sub-dial, a diamond set black dial. Here you have a silver dial, diamond set again, two-hand manual watch, and a minute repeater, and the estimate is pretty much in the same range, right? So you can, from the same time period, in a similar configuration, you can get a time-only watch from Patek Philippe, you can get a minute repeater from Vacheron Constantin. And that's the kind of value that Vacheron Constantin represents in the segment of dress watches from the 50s and 60s and even 70s. And what, I mean, you see the work, the anglage, the decoration, the Geneva waves on the bridges. It's just incredible. Incredible piece. A 2526, this is again an extraordinary piece. A diamond set dial. It also comes with a plain dial as well, additional enamel dial. It's 2526 is a very interesting reference. This is a piece from 1955. It's the first Calatrava with an automatic movement, and the movement themselves are so beautiful. Of course, carry the Geneva seal, but there's no exhibition case back, of course. But they're so beautiful and so intriguing that some collectors actually struck a special deal with the case makers Voutilainen and Catin, and got exhibition case backs made for 2526, so they could actually get a peek at these calibers, which are particularly gorgeous when you look at the guillochage on their full 18 karat gold rotors. That barley corn design, I think, is very beautiful. And this is a very special example of reference 2526 at lot 205 for an estimated value of 100,000 to 200,000 Swiss francs. Please hit the like button and support. I really appreciate you. This has been a great show, and I'm putting the extra work just because you are here and just because you are supporting me, just because you have been pushing me to work harder. I will finish this particular broadcast with you. I really appreciate you. By the way, I heart Maldives. I love Maldives. Maldives, my friend, thank you so much for your contribution. It really helps, and thank you for your kind words. Thank you for liking the video as well. I really appreciate it. That gives me a lot of exposure, and that helps me reach even bigger audience. So thank you so much. This is reference 403.031 of the Lange Datograph, the first generation of the Datograph. So it's a smaller case size, not only from the current generation of the Datograph, but also even smaller than 1815 in a way, if only ever so slightly. The pink gold version with the black dial has been seen on the wrist of the famous watchmaker Philippe Dufour, and therefore a lot of times these pieces are called the Dufourograph. And as you see, they don't have the power reserve indicator. They do have the oversized date. I kind of love their dimensions, like it even better than the more recent version. This is from 2005. Of course, has the 951.1 hand-wound chronograph movement that has already become iconic in its own regard. That beautiful freehand graved decoration on the balance cock. Just a beautiful, beautiful piece. Of course, I do prefer it in platinum, but in pink gold, it doesn't look half bad either. And here is an example from 2005 that has an estimated value of 30,000 to 60,000, lot 208. I'm going to go to the end and count from there. We have at lot 332. It is a particular highlight of this auction. That's why they saved the best for the last. It's a Philippe Dufour Simplicité from 2020, 37 millimeters, has Dufour's version of Breguet numerals. That's lovely charcoal gray dial with a wave kind of, or like a how to put this, the decoration in the middle, it's like a swirl, vortex kind of dial decoration at the center. Great guilloche work. Of course, the radial guillochage for the second sub-dial as well. It's a very elegant but also very simple watch. Of course, it should be with that name, Simplicité. I love the movement as well. Again, in the same way, it's very sharp, but it's also very down to earth in a way. The anglage, you can basically fix your hair on it. Not that I can, since I don't have much hair left on my head, but it's so perfectly mirror polished, and the brushed grain of the Côte de Genève, the Geneva waves on the bridges is just the perfect contrast. I do love the decoration of this hand-wound movement, and the work is, of course, first class wherever you are. Look, I mean, look at this. You don't see a lot of even in the high horology category, you don't see movement finishes that are this sharp. But of course, this is a kind of watch that is in a class of its own. From 2020, this is Philippe Dufort Simplicité in white gold, beautiful charcoal gray dial with guilloche decoration at the center, Breguet numerals. The estimated value is 350 to 700,000. Zan says, I really want a datograph. You and me both, brother. I would love to have a first generation in platinum. I think for my small wrists also it would be a better fit than the recent one. But hey, I would have to probably sell a limb or two to even get close to owning one. Full On John says, I want to buy a Pelagos 39 and beat the fike out of it. That's a beautiful watch. That is a beautiful watch. And the Lange movement was beautiful as usual. That was for the pink gold datograph from the first generation with the L951.1 caliber. Peeping Time says, I have a Seiko Marine Master 300M that I wear exclusively for years. I love all the chips and scratches. And Full On John says, for the Dufort hands, the Dauphine hands, you could cut yourself on those hands, possible. And Peeping Times Marine Master has a black dial. After I go through a few more watches, I'm gonna give you another freebie, another surprise. Stay tuned, especially if you're interested in hand-wound chronographs from the 60s. This is an interesting take on them. I'm sure you'll like it. Now, going back to the auction, lot 229, it is a yellow gold Daniel Roth Monopusher chronograph. As you know, Daniel Roth, in many ways, is a student of Breguet, and his chronographs, especially the earlier examples, but really throughout the existence of the brands, very much give out the vibe, exude the airs of Breguet that is made for the new century or for the new millennium even. That beautiful, beautifully hand-decorated dial combined with the aesthetics of the Ellipsocurvex case gives Daniel Roth chronographs a very different air, a very different aesthetic. And if you like it, it's a very unique piece. As you see, this is my favorite movement put together in a unique way, of course. It's still worked out of a CH27 base, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, sorry, it actually uses a vintage Lemania 15 CHT, or 2220, rather than the 2320. There are only about 50 pieces of these Monopusher chronographs by Daniel Roth, some in platinum, mostly in yellow gold. This is the yellow gold version. It has an exhibition caseback, hand-wound chronograph with the Monopusher, roughly from 1990. And it is estimated to go for $20,000 to $40,000. We have an F. Bejon Tourbillon Sovereign at 231, executed in platinum. It has a remontoire d'égalité, which is a technique of regulation. White gold dial, very uniquely executed, carries all the signature elements of the F. Bejon aesthetic, including a separate dial for the hours and minutes, an indicator for the power reserve, and in this case, of course, you have the tourbillon perfectly proportioned to the main dial and set right beside it. It's a very balanced watch. As unique as it is in its design, it's also somehow perfectly balanced and aesthetically pleasing. From 2003, 38 millimeters in diameter, very unique piece. There are not many of them out there. This is an F. Bejon Tourbillon Sovereign with remontoire, and the estimated value is 250 to 500,000 Swiss francs. We have a Laurent Ferrier Classic Origin titanium dress watch with their unique set of hands. It's a hand-wound caliber that's very familiar to the fans of LF. An opaline dial, which I think really fits well with the titanium case that they polish in an impeccable way. It really looks very precious, even though I think it also has a very light and sporty feel. Laurent Ferrier really cuts the difference between a sporty dress watch and a dressy sports watch pretty well. Of course, Classic Origin is their most formal, most classical design in a way. And this would be a perfect dress watch for a young person, if you ask me, or a lovely everyday wear for an older gentleman as well. Lot 226. This is Laurent Ferrier Classic Origin from 2021, and the estimated value is $25,000 to $50,000. You have at 2024, you have a Audemars Piguet Royal Oak reference 26579. Beautiful black ceramic Royal Oak perpetual calendar. These are extremely well desired. You know, they used to exist in black, white, and now they have that French blue or royal blue version. I think they're all, very intriguing. I like the fact that Audemars Piguet experiments with material. I think they are too big at 41 millimeters, but people who buy these kinds of watches like them bigger. They have also a weekly calendar on the chapter ring, in addition to everything else that an Audemars Piguet calendar, a perpetual calendar has, of course, from the leap year indicator to the moon phase. I think these are really, again, really beautiful watches, not necessarily my style, but I can totally see why they would be so extremely desired. And the estimated value in this case is 180,000 to 360,000 Swiss francs. Zan says, I own the LF. It's very hard to read anytime the hands are near the sector lines. Oh, that sucks. That sucks. I was actually wondering about that, because even in the picture, Zan, even in their photography, you can kind of see how it seems a little too discreet for its own good. Like this shot, for example, you can kind of see how at the crosshair, especially, right, at 9 o'clock, the hands would practically disappear. You could kind of see that. That's a shame. Maybe it's too discreet for its own good, but it is a beautiful watch. You have the medium-sized Nautilus at 223, reference 3800, executed in full platinum with a diamond set dial. It's a very rare example. It's the smaller case size from 1995, and the estimate is 70,000 to 140,000 US dollars. Please upvote. It really helps. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you're just stumbling upon this broadcast. I'm here for Watch Talk on an everyday basis, and I create other sorts of content too. And now that we are getting closer to monetization, you can expect much more content, much more diversified content, hopefully more frequently as well. The time is coming. It's drawing closer. But in the meantime, please support by subscribing, by spreading the word, by hitting the like on the videos. It really helps. If you want to go even beyond that, the information for your support, for your contributions is in the crawling ticker. It is included in the video description. I've also posted the link, but let me go back to presenting on the auction. We're almost there, and I want to share with you just a few more pieces. An early example, in fact, two early examples of Patek Philippe Calatrava travel time, 2597. These are reference numbers 212 and 213. And in this case, of course, I don't think there are skeleton hands. You just have the pushers for jumping the hours back and forth in the case of these references. The model is based on reference 570, of which it's basically a carbon copy with the addition of the two pushers. Operating them makes the hour hand instantaneously jump forward or backward by 1 hour. So intelligent and enduring was this travel time design that versions of the same system can still be found in modern and current production in Patek Philippe watches. In fact, its evolution was the focus of the latest advanced research efforts, the travel time Akonaut 5650, and of course, there was a split-second chronograph introduced afterwards, so it's no longer the latest and the most recent, but that's a minor quibble. A subtle addition which betrays the attention to details of Patek Philippe can be found in the pusher protection. Two elements prevent inadvertent operation of the pushers, which can be effectively operated by inserting a nail into the appropriate slits, as you can see here. And that has an estimated value of 120,000 to 250,000 Swiss francs from 1956, almost 36 millimeters in diameter. Production of the model can be divided into two series. The first series, like this present watch, features a single hour hand, so this is an early iteration, as I mentioned. Second series, launched in 1962, named 2597-1, added an additional blued steel hour hand, thus showing both home and away times. It is important to point out that when this second series was launched, Patek Philippe gave retailers who still had in stock two-hand pieces the opportunity to upgrade them with a three-hand service kit. Nice. Consequently, first series examples retaining the original two-hour hand configuration are extremely scarce. You see, less utilitarian perhaps, but more collectible for that reason. This is a 2597, and you have two examples, the two known examples of the watch, back to back from Phillips, and they are about to fetch some serious coin. The better preserved version in lot 212. In pink gold, you have an estimate of 120 to 250,000 Swiss francs, and in the yellow gold, you have 40 to 80,000. You have a Patek Philippe 530, which is a very rare 1940s chronograph by Patek Philippe, of course, hand wound. The caliber is still at the time based on the Valjoux 13. This is a reference 530, two-tone dial with a tachometer on the outside, double signed by Haussmann and Company, relatively oversized for its period, 36.5 millimeters in 1941, and the estimate for that reason is half a million to a million Swiss francs. You have a modern day date with a sodalite dial that is set with diamonds as index markers, reference 118209 at lot 216. It's a day date 36 from 2000, and the estimated value of it is $15,000 to $30,000. And finally, a watch that we were already talking about. Well, I'll come to that last. I do want to save that for the last. You have a 4-digit beautiful white gold day date at 217. Again, the estimate is $15,000 to $30,000. Reference number 803, and it is from 1967. I think a white gold day date is really a beautiful thing, and it happens to have an Italian day disc. It comes with the COSC certification guarantee and box, 15,000 to 30,000, depending on for how much it goes. This can be an interesting watch to watch. You have at 219 another perpetual calendar by Audemars Piguet. In this case, what you have is Royal Oak Offshore, and it is a perpetual calendar chronograph. As you can see, a very early case number there, a very early serial number, 25854 in steel, perpetual calendar chronograph. It has the tachometer on the chapter ring. It has the moon phase at 3 o'clock. And as much as I'm not a big fan of the Royal Oak Offshore, I think in this particular configuration, it seems like a lot of watch. So I do appreciate lot 219, and the estimated value of it is $50,000 to $100,000. Now we have the latest 50th anniversary reference of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Jumbo, the first one with an in-house caliber, right? The JLC caliber 920 base, which is to this day the thinnest automatic watch movement with a full rotor, has finally been retired for Audemars Piguet. They have designed a new in-house caliber for the Royal Oak Jumbo, their flagship model. And as you see, this one has the special 50th anniversary rotor in full platinum. The rotor itself, I believe, is of white gold, I'm assuming. I will have to double check that, but the watch itself is platinum, and it has that fumé green dial. I think aesthetically the watch is really pleasing. Once again, really my misgiving about AP in the present day is about customer service, is about the availability of the watches because of a disproportionate hype around them, an artificial hype, I have to say, around them. But otherwise, I think this is a beautiful piece. I love the proportions of a jumbo Royal Oak case. And in this case, I also like the dial color as well, even though it doesn't have the characteristic tapisserie decoration on it, the pantograph engraved decoration on it. It's still a beautiful color. 50th anniversary platinum Royal Oak Jumbo, reference 16202 PT. The estimated value of 100,000 to 200,000 Swiss francs. And this is lot 222. And finally, we have arrived at a watch that I've been wanting to show you since I have talked quite a bit about the Cartier Tortue Monopusher chronograph. We have talked quite a bit about CPCP, the Collection Privée Cartier Paris. This is the platinum version of that Monopusher chronograph they produced for about a decade. It's quite rare. It's, you know, the whole endeavor is for about less than 2,000 timepieces. These platinum versions with the blue accents on the dial are even more limited. The estimate is 20 to 40,000 Swiss francs, but it will go, trust me, for much more. This is reference 2396, a movement that carries the signature of F.B. Jean as well as Denis Flageolet, and that caliber is called 045MC. There's not much to say about this watch except to mark that it is in many ways the flagship of the horological leaps and bounds that Cartier has taken since the late 90s. It is in a way the symbol the signature and the execution of the horological advancement and investment they have poured into the brand since that time. Of course, you cannot neglect the fact that, at least in my opinion, the Cartier Tortue shape, the turtle on legs case design itself is a thing of beauty, is really something that exemplifies Cartier's beautiful designs and aesthetic vision. And of course, the final touch in all the CPCP pieces is that rosette guillochage, the rosette design, guilloche decoration, engine turn decoration that beautifies the dial finally. The breguet hands that are heat tempered and that coordinate beautifully with the other blue accents on the dial, of course, don't hurt. You have a real sapphire cabochon that plays, again, exceptionally well with that blue theme. And in fact, there's so much blue in and around this watch that Phillips took another path in their presentation and went with a burgundy strap to perhaps intone that luxurious, deep red of Cartier's presentation boxes. And this watch is, in fact, supplied with the proper certificates and presentation box that the CPCP watches came with from 1998 to 2008. Professor, you're here with me for the last 15 minutes, I think.
Yes. Congratulations.
Yes. That was a nice surprise.
I told you.
I have been putting so much work that I kind of lost track at a certain point, but here we are.
No. Yes, sir. Here you are. I think it's great. Congratulations. As an economist, I worked out on the modeling. So I told you, with maybe a few hours, how you're gonna hit the 1,000.
And there we are. But let's focus on what we can do in about 10 more minutes, because I plan
10
to
more
leave.
minutes. Yes, my God. Okay, 10 more minutes.
I planned to leave an hour ago, but suddenly people were here and we were in a jovial mood, and I hadn't finished the auction, so I said, let's just push through. And I did promise them, actually, one more goodie at the end. For those who were patient enough, I wanted to show them another deal. Again, everything being relative, we're talking about a gold chronograph. I know the brand doesn't have a lot of cachet in its own right, but at a certain point in time, and I am talking about Maurice Lacroix and the collaboration they did with the famous watchmaker Andreas Strehler in 2006. And that was in developing their first in-house caliber. And they contracted Strehler to basically create a modern iteration of one of the classic hand-wound calibers of the 60s for hand-wound chronographs. And that was Venus 175. Just as an example, Venus 175 is what powered most of the Navi timers in the 60s and beyond. So this is how Andreas Strehler reimagined and recreated Venus 175 for a more modern and luxurious setting. It is much more extravagantly decorated and presented than what you would see in the 60s. Of course, you have an exhibition case back. One of the things that I like about this chronograph, beyond the fact that it is powered by a Venus 175, much like a Navitimer reference 806, it's also much more reasonably and classically sized compared to other Maurice Lacroix chronographs. It's 40 millimeters. You can see that frosting for the hour ring. You can see these different guilloche decorations for the center of the dial, as well as the sub-dials. I think it has a beautiful feel of a classic two-register chronograph, but also luxurious touches that you would otherwise associate with brands like Breguet, Daniel Roth after it, and Parmigiani Fleurier, again, with that influence. And you have here a beautiful case design with, again, a decorated bezel, crown set with a cabochon, stepped lugs. I think this is a beautiful watch, an in-house caliber that is derived from one of the true and tested hand-wound chronograph calibers from the 1960s. So this was my little surprise. And as it happens, again, for a yellow gold chronograph with this kind of heritage, with this kind of legacy, it is listed for less than $4,000. I have no connections to the seller. I have no intention to particularly promote it, but I'm dropping the link here because you have been so patient. Snap it up, make an offer. It is particularly appealing to those of you who want something luxurious and modern, even if you like vintage chronographs. Perhaps you think that it's not for you for daily wear. You want something more robust. You want something newer. You want something more modern. This is a great option. The Maurice Lacroix masterpiece with hand-wound chronograph movement designed by none other than Andreas Strehler. There we go. Thank you for your patience, Professor.
No, you say it very well. I like your German accent.
Ah, selbstverständlich.
Genau.
Genau. How you been?
Okay. I wanted to it's very early here in I am in the city of where it houses and has the oldest university in the English-speaking world, as you know, and writing away my book. I have to finish very soon.
Nice.
I don't
Professor,
think anybody
I
will
don't
read
know.
it.
I'm a very humble man of limited means. I wouldn't know anything about what you're talking about, but thank you for sharing. As always, we are beholden to your knowledge that you so generously share with us.
Well, I don't know. I'm just as gluttonous as you guys are.
That's amazing. So, do you have any science to drop for our audience before we leave tonight? Any doomsday predictions or anything perhaps more optimistic?
More optimistic. Okay. I enjoyed Aussie expats short video. Not that I'm chasing all of us. I just happened to come across it. So very nice. Well said. Look, I think that we are in this kind of, well, this country is completely lost where I am. The UK, I think, is going down the toilet completely. The Minister of Finance, so-called, the Chancellor, was kicked out yesterday. So somebody who comes from, who has a degree from the same city where I teach, the same university, in fact. So I wasn't very happy to see that he got fired, but I wasn't expecting he was going to stay for more than a few weeks. I think the prime minister is going to be kicked out as well. She's completely lost. Poor thing. She should just sell vegetables, maybe.
Wasn't she just installed? Didn't she just come in?
Yeah, she just came in, but she's gonna just go out. She's gonna be the shortest staying prime minister in the history of the UK. Um, so I think this country has a lot, and mainly because of Brexit. I think the people of the UK need to rethink their priorities. And so, for instance, if you get a watch, you buy a watch in Switzerland, and they send it over to you, you're going to pay a lot of customs and taxes, and it's going to wait, at customs for a few more days. Things are very different today, post Brexit, than before. So, not good. But overall, it seems that the pundits, the experts, what kind of an expert am I? But the experts are saying that stock markets in the US have another 20-30% downward trend. So, I think we're in the middle of the storm, if not towards 1/3 done with the storm. So we have another 2/3. Things are bound to be bad just because it's the cycle of things. And that's how it is. Now, what happens to the watch world? Yeah, I do believe that there is this underlying demand, but people are holding off major purchases only because it is a difficult energy crisis happening in Europe and a cost of living crisis and so forth. Are watches being produced? Yes. We see the supply of watches more and more coming on stream, but the lines and the queues for these coveted watches are still there. It's not easy to get your hands on on a steel professional piece, only because remember that for one piece that comes in once a month for from an authorized dealer, you have 50-60 people who are waiting to buy it, so they need to go down the list, and it could be that 30 of them say no, and then you have another 20 who want the watch. So look, we are in this situation. If you have some money, my advice is keep it and manage your finances. Don't be as gluttonous as some of us. But overall, I think the state of the watch market will at some point return, like everything else. The issue is, when does it return? A good example I give to my students is that yes, things mean revert. They go back to a certain balance, but it takes a while. The only issue is that we don't know how long it takes. And the example I give is GE. Had you bought GE stock in the early 2000s, you have to still wait to recover from that early 2000 phase. So it depends what you buy. Had you bought Peloton shares when it was $50 and $60 in anticipation that it's going to go to 100, well, Peloton shares are at $7. So it has a long way, if at all, again, to go up at 50 and 60, and needless to say, about 100 plus when it was 150 and 60 and 70. So look, you have to be measured and balanced in your decisions. We can still admire and love watches, which is what we do here, and we can still observe, and you don't necessarily have to buy, and in life, you can do more with less. That's where I would leave it.
Well, I mean, the philosophy that I really embrace in this channel is very aspirational, right? A lot of watches that I discuss here are well out of my reach, and certainly well out of the reach of the largely middle class people who watch this channel. But the idea is basically to always be one step ahead, always be well informed about what we seek in watches in terms of horological quality, in terms of historical value, lasting value, and in terms of ultimately good deals. So if and when those good deals come up, the knowledgeable ones, the people who are most well prepared, are going to be the ones who snag them up. So we're just learning, we're being patient, and we're looking for deals for watches that seem to be not really trending well in terms of the price, but actually present a lot of horological and historical value. Ultimately, that's the kind of watch that I want to highlight. But yes, ultimately, we aspire to things that we can't necessarily have. And there's nothing wrong with that, because again, it keeps us one step ahead. It keeps us on the edge. It keeps us motivated to learn more, motivated to earn more, if it is at all possible. Keeping Time says, take all your cash to the Phillips auction. That sounds fun, but also probably disastrous financial advice. You didn't hear it from me for sure. JB says, I'm still a buyer at retail. Hey, look, if you have disposable income and you can find the watch you desire at or below market price, a Rolex or Patek at retail price, of course you should grab it. If you have the resources, if it's not gonna put you into the red, put you into debt, if it's not gonna trouble your family, you're offered at at retail, snag it. Peeping Time appreciates the professor's advice, and Jake Brooks says, nothing offered in a lot of visits, but one sent me a handwritten note. That's very kind. That's very kind. Any last words, Professor?
No, I don't. I mean, I said it all. If people don't understand it, well, they need to rethink.
Great. Thank you, Professor. I was getting ready to sign off right before you came in, but I thought it was a good time to share that little gem, that little tip. It was my second tip of the day. But
You mean Maurice, the ML?
Yes, sir.
ML is a very good brand. It's a very good brand, although rather new. A very
Yes.
good brand, and it hasn't succumbed to the vagaries of the market, both in the 80s and 90s. It has done very well, and I think the last piece you showed was a unique piece because they developed a full in-house movement. I think it's called it was the ML 106.
That's true, sir. Yes.
Yeah, the ML 106. Maurice Lacroix is one of the most subtle brands, I would say, in the Swiss.
And I mean, again,
industry.
I like that watch because a lot of Maurice Lacroix watches stylistically are larger than life. They're outsized, but that chronograph really represents classical taste. Beautiful decoration, hardworking, nicely decorated, manual chronograph movement. It's a great package, and for under $4,000. Maybe you can find another deal around $3,500 or negotiate a deal with this particular seller. It's great, but I put it out there by saying, again, in each live stream towards the end, I will offer a very special tip. One of my one of the deals I found online from a scavenger hunt, or more general advice about buying specific kinds of vintage watches. So stay tuned. That will be a feature in every live stream, and those who are patient and those who are stay with us until the very end, they will get rewarded in that particular way. Jake, thank you for the nice words. Congrats on the 1,000. Well deserved and earned. It's thanks to people like you. Thanks to everyone in the audience. Thank you for your presence and support. And thank you for especially the professor, who here is always kind and generous with his time. All right, signing off. I'll see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, sit tight for further developments. I am going to be here at the same time. Goodbye. Adieu.